Welcome, all of you here. We're here at the Arizona Libertarian Party State Convention in Tucson. My name is Wes Benedict. I'm from Austin, Texas. I formerly served as the executive director of the National Libertarian Party for over 8 years. That's longer than anyone ever served in that position. Served as the executive director of the Libertarian Party for 4 years, which is also longer than anyone could survive that position. It's not always easy working for the Libertarian Party or within it or being a candidate or a volunteer. So thank everyone who showed up today, and we want to keep inspiring other people to show up and be active libertarians. Did anybody go to the Larkin Rose presentation speech last night? Okay, most of you did. Larkin Rose, who's a very principled, entertaining guy, said the Libertarian Party is not only worthless, but worse than worthless. It actually damages the liberty movement. And he said running for office is a very bad idea. It just reinforces the fact that the system's legitimate. And he would never run for office, but if he did, he would do a lot of interesting things. And so my job here today is now to try and recruit people to run for office as libertarians and get involved with the Libertarian Party. And so it's tough to follow a very entertaining presentation from Larkin Rose. But I will say he did make a lot of good points that I agree with. And so I'm going to bring up some of those as I talk about running for office as a libertarian and how you can make a difference running for office. I especially liked Larkin's comment about, because I asked this question, I said, he was talking about how we should stop complying with the current system rather than trying to convince politicians to change the laws. Rather than trying to change things through the legislature, just stop complying with all the laws you don't agree with. And I asked him, because I always assumed he was probably a right-leaning guy, because there's a lot of right-wing podcasters out there that like to talk a lot and agree on a lot. And so I figured he's probably hardcore on libertarianism, except when it comes to immigration. So, I just had to say, okay, what about those Mexicans who illegally come to America and get jobs illegally, work, and avoid paying taxes illegally if they can get away with it? What do you think about that? And Larkin said, I don't remember his exact wording, but it was more power to them. Good for them. That's great. We all need to do exactly that. So I appreciate that Larkin is not just a right-wing Republican showing up to complain about the Libertarian Party or because we're not Republican enough. He's obviously not a Republican if he's out saying things like that. He did bring up a lot of arguments about how Libertarian candidates have been too moderate, too unprincipled, too willing to compromise. And I can at least say that probably the biggest complaint against me while I have been on staff with the Libertarian Party is that I'm too radical. But to him, I'm very moderate. And then there's a lot of folks who are quite moderate beyond where I am. So I want to talk about why you should run for office. And while Larkin does a great job recruiting folks and teaching them about liberty, not everybody can be like Larkin. Larkin's funny, he's entertaining, he enjoys public speaking. That's all tougher for me. Sometimes I'm funny, sometimes I'm boring, sometimes I'm scared to talk in front of a crowd. A lot of other people out there likewise don't have the same personality or skills that Larkin has, but we still want to find ways for them to become active libertarians and make a difference and make government smaller or get rid of government wherever we can do that. So I've found that one of the best ways to do that is to have people run for office. And Let me just give you a little background on some of the candidate recruitment that I've done. Come on in and have a seat. Welcome. When I was hired as executive, first of all, I joined the Libertarian Party like in 1996. It was a long time ago, and I just paid my dues, and I was a volunteer occasionally and read newsletters. Eventually, I became a county chair and volunteered a little more, and then someone asked me to run for office, which scared the hell out of me, but I ran for county commissioner and did it, and I got a few votes. I had a good time. A lot of folks ran for office with me. Having done that in 2002, I also ran for Austin City Council a couple of times after that, and I got better and better and better. In 2003, I ran in a citywide race, went to like 40 public forums, and I ended up getting 35% of the vote. It was a nonpartisan race, but it was a citywide race. A couple of years later, I ran again. I placed second out of 5. I got like 17%. The incumbent got a lot more than that, like 56 or something. And then there were some other pretty strong outsider candidates. So I'm just pointing that out, that I have run for office myself several times, and that's what made it easier for me to recruit candidates, because I knew the process. So in 2006, as executive director of the Libertarian Party of Texas, I recruited 168 candidates that were on the November ballot. Now, to get them onto the ballot, that in 2006, we had over 200 who filled out applications to file to be candidates, because the deadline to file is about a year before that. And so over the year, that number dwindled. Some people moved out of state. Some people decided not to be candidates. A few of them, the Libertarian Party said, we don't like you, you're too whatever, and they didn't nominate them. We call it NODA-ing them, which is none of the above, voting for none of the above, rather than having the candidate. But still, we had 168 candidates on the ballot in 2006. And there were so many, we got over 7 million votes if you add up all their individual candidates' votes. And a lot of it is because there's some statewide races. There were a few statewide races where there was no Democrat that filed. So it was a Republican versus a Libertarian, got over 1 million votes in a couple of those races. But still, 7 million votes is a lot. It was more than all of the rest of the 49 states combined, the other Libertarian Party candidates combined. We got over half of the votes right there in Texas. So it was a little, it energized people, by the way. You know, it's like, wow, we're big, you know. Now, we lost every one of those elections, but people had a good time, and they're seeing we're getting big, we're doing stuff. There are some who have won, yeah. I'll get into how over 500 have won in a little bit, okay? So don't worry. Don't be discouraged that 168 lost in Texas. Everybody doesn't lose their election. Although I still think those 168 did very valuable service to the libertarian movement and party. And I would encourage that kind of thing to keep going on. Now, when you break a big record like that, and it took a lot of work, by the way, it wasn't easy. It was a little risky to try and do that again in 2008. You know, if we did 168, we got to do better than that next time. We ended up getting 173 onto the ballot in 2008. That's how many survived to the November election day. And I think it was exactly 100 who ran for state representative. We kind of targeted the state representative office because, for one, that sounded cool, right? We ran way more than the Democrats and almost as many as the Republicans, you know, for state representative that year. But we also were able to send a letter that targeted specifically for the race. So when you're asking people to run for office, it's quite helpful to specify what you want them to run for. So if I just say, sir, man, we really want you to run for office, it'd be great. You might think about it, and maybe you'll do it. I don't know you, but maybe you'll do it. But if I send a letter to you saying, we don't have a candidate, a libertarian for state representative in District 97, and we're trying to get 100, and we already have like 55, and we need somebody from District 97 to run as a libertarian, and you live there, and nobody else is responding, that's a little bit more specific, a little more aggressive, and people are like, okay, yeah, I think it worked. I think people read those letters and got those notices, and because it wasn't just run for office, it was run for state representative, District 97. You live in that district. By the way, in that letter asking them to do it, you know how you get like a credit card? You know how you get all this junk mail from the credit card companies? They say, just sign here and we'll send you your credit card right away. Well, we kind of did that with their paperwork to be a candidate. So we took the candidate application, mail merged all their info on there, and put in there, here's your application. We've already filled it out for you. You need to add your occupation, your employer, and then get it notarized and signed. And by the way, if you don't know how to get a notary, you can find them at the bank or a UPS store or a few other places where you can get a notary. Some people don't even know how to get a notary, but if you explain it to them and make it simple, even people who don't know that can quickly go get a notary. And I always put my phone number and name and email on all those letters that I sent out. So if you have any questions, call me 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. My cell phone is 512-659-8896. Email is wesbenedict@gmail.com. And if I don't answer because I'm busy, I'll call you back. Leave a voicemail. A lot of people are scared to give their phones and emails out publicly. You can do it. I've been giving mine out forever. The phone rings shockingly too little, in spite of the fact that I mail it to people and it's on websites everywhere. So if you're, that's just a lesson for being a candidate as well. A lot of people, their first thing is, I'm scared to put my phone and email or something up there. It's like, put it up there. You're not going to get harassed. You're going to be like wishing somebody would send you an email or somebody would call. But you can get a P.O. box and a special email address if you want to, if you're a candidate. So in 2008, 173 candidates. There weren't as many two-way races, so we didn't get quite as many votes, but we still got millions of votes. And it was motivating. And by the way, all 173 of those lost as well. But when you go look at, we did things like count the mentions of libertarian in the Austin American-Statesman, the newspaper, and other newspapers throughout the state. It's like the publicity went up and up and up and up and up for the word libertarian and for the Libertarian Party in our candidates. We got media lots and lots of different places, and you get it because of having those candidates. Now, some people want to win their elections, and in Texas, a lot of races are partisan. It can be tough, but there's also a lot of nonpartisan races. For example, city council, school board, and there's some other special districts out there that you can run for that are nonpartisan races. And when I first started all this in 2004, we knew of 2 libertarians who were elected to nonpartisan offices. By 2008, we had 8 libertarians elected to nonpartisan offices, including our state chairman, Pat Dixon, who was elected to the Lago Vista City Council. So here's Pat Dixon helping us recruit all these partisan candidates. A lot of them lose, but he's also going out there and winning elections, getting on the city council in Lago Vista. Both are very valuable activities. We had a guy, Larry Bush, didn't even know he was doing it. He probably didn't want to tell all the libertarians in case it didn't work out. But suddenly we find out Larry Bush is on a city council, and a year later, we find out he's mayor of his city. And I didn't really look into it till a few years later, but I asked him to meet me for lunch and tell me how you won your office and what did you do. And he said, well, I just went, and the city is Jarrell, Texas. It's about 30 miles north of where I live. He said, I went to some city council meetings, spoke a time or two, and met some of the city councilmen, and I was just kind of nice. And I just spent $100 on yard signs for myself, and knocked on a few doors and met a few people, but I just beat someone else who was running. Like, he spent $100 and a little bit of time and won his race for city council. When he ran for mayor, they liked him over that year or two. The other mayor resigned, and he ran unopposed and became mayor of Gerald, Texas. And he was reelected a second time. I can't remember if he had an opponent the second time. But it's possible to win elections. The best way to win is to not have an opponent. And there's a ton of races out there where that can be done, including in Arizona. Yeah.
I was in New York at the time, and there was an election for something called the Area Policy Board. And there were 3 seats in my district, but only 2 candidates.
Yeah.
So I was a shoo-in.
Yeah. It happens a lot in most states, but maybe not most states, but in a lot of states, it's possible to win. And I've just met a few here that have done it in Arizona. I mean, you did that, right? You were unopposed. Is it Nathan Madden? Am I saying his name right? He filed to be a candidate. No one else filed. He won unopposed. It's quite common. In 2013, I helped with Virginia candidate recruitment in that state. And by the way, I lived in Texas at the time, but I'm helping Virginia. I had lived in Virginia for a while, and I'm like, I want to help Virginia. It was 2013. Most states have partisan races in even numbered years. There's like a small handful. It's like Virginia, Mississippi, New Jersey, and 1 or 2 others in the whole country that have like state representative races and county races that are partisan in those odd years. So that's one reason I'm like, well, I want to recruit some candidates and there's not any elections anywhere, so let me do Virginia. It's harder in Virginia. They have to collect some signatures, and they had a long history of not running many candidates, so it was a challenge. But we did end up getting, I think it was 6 candidates who ran for it's called delegate there, which is the same as state representative. That was tied an all-time record in Virginia. They have to get like 100 signatures to get on the ballot that are legitimate. Everyone thinks getting signatures is easy till they go out and do it. And that was the same thing in Virginia. I would talk to these candidates. It might be a little harder than you think. You need to go get started early. And of course, most of them kind of procrastinated. And in the end, I did end up flying out there myself and collecting a bunch of signatures. I went door to door in several places in Virginia. The signatures have to be from your district. So if you're running for governor, you can just go anywhere, right? Big festivals and whatever and get signatures. But if you're running for state representative in a little bitty district, they have to be from that district. And if some places like these, like rural, like suburban places, don't have any like public places. It's all just neighborhoods. So I went door to door. It's very slow and painful. You get like 2 or 3 an hour, but it was necessary. What?
But they're good.
It's like they're almost 100% valid because you're getting someone who lives in the district, and if you're going in a neighborhood, especially like single family homes, a lot of those are registered voters and valid signatures. So I went and got them. We got those candidates on the ballot. We also funded Robert Sarvis, part of his petition drive to run for governor. In the previous election, they had gotten like 0.5% for governor, and that was like their high water mark. This time they got 6.5%, and it really got tons of news. The Washington Post was writing about it. All these major news outlets, even nationwide, were talking about the race in Virginia because it's close between the Republican and Democrat, and the Libertarian was polling well. And, I never would have guessed he would have gotten 6.5%, because if you get 0.5%, I would have guessed probably he'll get, well, maybe 0.6% because I'm helping, a little bit. But I didn't help a lot. I actually didn't help a lot. So I'm not to be credited for the 6.5%. I am to be largely credited for the fact that they had any candidate at all. And if the Libertarian Party doesn't run a candidate, then you will get 0% guaranteed. You won't get any votes. Sarvis was a very good candidate, a nice guy, an active candidate, and he said nice things that made the Libertarian Party look good in Virginia and the rest of the country. And so I was very happy to have him. 2013 in Alabama. For years, Alabama's always been a tough place to get ballot access. And since 2000, they hadn't run any candidates. And there is a rule, though, where you can just get the county on the ballot. So getting the state on the ballot is super hard. Getting, it's like you're talking 20,000 signatures, which might cost $50,000 or $100,000 or so. But getting a single county was very manageable. And so we're like, you know what, Alabama, you can't run 0 candidates. You can't just keep doing this. Let's get 1 county on the ballot and get you running for office. And so we got Jefferson County on the ballot, and they ran 9 candidates, and I'm sure that was the most ever, that they had run. So some people, I've recruited a lot of candidates who didn't win, and some people have criticized that. And I say I like to run candidates who can win and candidates who can't win. Either way, you either win and get to change some rules or laws if you're in office. If you don't win, you help get the message out. Well, in 2019, a guy told me that, his name's Chuck Moulton, told me about how you could get people elected in Pennsylvania in a bunch of lower offices because often no one files for them, and they're partisan offices. So often it's like township council members and township auditors and even some school board offices. No one files for them. I'm sorry, the deadline for Republicans or Democrats for that election is in May. And it's because of the primary. But if no one runs in them, libertarians and independents and third parties can file after that May primary. And so now, if you file to be a libertarian on the ballot, you're not even going to run against a Republican or Democrat. You might have an independent, and you might have a write-in against you. And I forgot to bring up my brochure here. Let me go get it, because I'm going to. I put it in writing, and I want y'all to be able to take it. You remember that letter I talked about saying run for state representative for Texas? We need you. We don't have one. We're trying to get 100 candidates. Well, the letter we sent in Pennsylvania was even better. It was way better, because this letter said, we want you to run for auditor of such and such township. Or in some cases, we listed 2 or 3 offices. So we got the list of registered libertarians, and we merged it with hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 offices that were uncontested. And we ranked them by what we thought was important. Like if there was a position for mayor, we said run for mayor. But some cases there was a mayor, a city councilman, and an auditor where that person lived. And so we sent them a letter and said, if you file to run for office, you will almost certainly win. And again, that letter's in here, so you can read it. You can get it. I'm going to hand you a copy of it. You can almost certainly win because, and we explain, the deadline for Republicans and Democrats has passed, but libertarians and independents can still run. And if you just agree to be a candidate, we will help you with all the paperwork. All you have to do is call my phone number. I'm Wes Benedict, and I had some credibility because it's like I was executive director. I'm not just some other guy. It's like I'm Wes Benedict. I was national director. The letter was written by Chuck Moulton, who had been a Pennsylvania chair of the Libertarian Party. And so, and by the way, you can go on to lp.org/pen, and we also have this information. So it's like you're getting it in a letter, and you can go to the website and see that it's a legit thing, because I don't trust most junk mail I get, and this one sounds crazy, right? If you file and run, you can be a candidate and get elected with no opponents. That sounds too good to be true, just like some other junk mail you get. all they have to do, I didn't tell them how to do all this stuff on that letter. Just call me and I'll step you through the process. And I think about 1 year, maybe 100 or so responded, and we got 20, I think it was 29 elected through that position. Of course, every time I do something once, I'm way better at it the second time. You know, you learn, oh, this was effective, this was fast, or my spreadsheet, if I set it up this way, it's going to be way easier and quicker. So the next time we sent about 10,000 letters out to people, and we got maybe 500 back that followed up. And the letter said, just call, text, or email me. That's all it said. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to fill out a form. They just had to call, text, or email Wes Benedict anytime. Text, you know. And a bunch of them texted. I hate text. It's a pain to keep track of. You know, it's not email is nice to keep track of to me because they're like in order and I don't push them away till I deal with it. Text messages are harder for me to manage, but they're real easy for some people to just send a text. So I'm like, you contact me any way you want. And a whole bunch of them texted me. And I sent them the letter with I had the database. So when they texted me, I knew if I got their name from them, you know, I would always say, what's your name and email address? You know, they tell me their name. And I'd be like, okay, now I know who you are. You're this guy in this office. So I'll call them right back. And I'd say, yeah, you got, and they would say, I got your letter. And I talk them through it. And in the end, we got 174 libertarians elected. This was in 2021. They call it people started calling it the Moulton maneuver. And some of them were minor offices. 53 were auditors. And they in Pennsylvania, this position of auditor is quite minor, even though, you know, it's not even like a full audit, it's even lower than that. But you know, libertarians want to audit the Fed or in the Fed or whatever, you know, be an auditor, you know, here you are in Pennsylvania. 66 were constable. Constable is more of an elections official in Pennsylvania than it is like a law enforcement officer in most other states. But 7, so those were minor offices. 7 were council members. So these are town council members who have a budget. They set ordinance. They tell you whether you can put a big tractor in your front yard or not. You know, they make real policies. 8 of them were school directors. That's like a school board with serious budgets. The schools spend a ton of money in every state. They had a lot of authority with libertarians there, hopefully protecting taxpayers, encouraging not spending money. You know, 21 were inspector of elections, 14 were judge of elections. Those are minor offices again, but they are like election day workers where you're at the polls monitoring election. 3 were mayor. Mayor's pretty significant office pretty much everywhere. 1 township supervisor, 1 tax collector of all things. So hopefully he didn't do his job. But I think a similar situation is here in Arizona. You know, I was just hearing that, you know, it was just being explained to me from Nathan, you know, how you can sometimes see what offices no one filed to run for. And I think that's an opportunity in Arizona. But, you know, my thing is I want people to run for office, any office, but it's more effective if you say particularly what office, but I still want people to run for any office. And I've run for office, I think 7 times myself. You make a difference. I got to do this 3 more states. I recruited 57 candidates in Arkansas in 2022, 67 in Alabama in 2022 as well. And that's me from Austin, Texas. And 2023, 17 in Mississippi. Most of the time I didn't even go to the state. You know, it's just on the phone, sending some junk mail, paper mail, sending some emails maybe. Sometimes we followed up with text if we're trying to fill some certain spots. It works everywhere. Everywhere I've tried to recruit candidates, it works. And that's why I formed something called the Libertarian Booster Pack specifically to recruit candidates. The reason I'm able to spend so much time recruiting candidates is because of that PAC. It's like, I would say it's like a half of my job. I have a couple of jobs. That's probably half my job. In another job I do together makes like full-time work for me. But I sometimes hear people discouraged by the Libertarian Party's results. You know, we haven't gotten big enough or whatever. And some of that can be discouraging. But to me, I still am hopeful because I've for one thing, I think if I had a staff of 5 or 10 people, I could recruit 3 times more candidates nationwide than what's happening right now. Because it's if you want to be a candidate and you want to recruit one candidate, it takes like a whole lot of time, right? You know, you got to learn the rules. Here's how I fill out the paperwork. Here's how I file the campaign finance reports. Here's how I campaign and make yard signs and answer surveys and go door to door or whatever you do. It takes quite a bit to do that once, but to do it for 50 people, it's like now you just do the exact same thing. It's so much quicker to do it for everyone else. That whole economies of scale thing. And I think we haven't done enough of that nationwide. There are some states who run a bunch of candidates, and they're clearly doing it. I think North Carolina's got 30 people running for office soon. Yes, laws come up that make it harder. Arizona passed a law saying your signature counts based on libertarians plus independents, registered independents. And so the number of signatures that libertarians have to get up went up by a factor of 10 in 2015 or 16 or something. Isn't that right? Does anybody know? Is that correct?
I don't know the exact year, but I know that what you just said in general is correct.
Yeah, it's like that. And so, you know, I originally came to insult you guys for not running enough candidates, but I know how hard it is when they put up barriers. There are barriers in Virginia, so we went for 6 for delegate, and we did so well in Texas. They passed laws putting these new filing fees, making it a lot harder in Texas. So it is harder to run for office now in Texas, but my PAC helped raise money for candidates to get them on the ballot. So it used to be free to run for a statewide office for libertarians because we had ballot access. They tacked on $3,750 filing fees for all the statewide offices, which is daunting. You know, some people have that much money laying around. Some don't. Most libertarians don't. Otherwise, I would have asked them for, give me that money. but my PAC helped candidates raise the $3,750. I'm like, hey, before the candidate even had to set up a website, do all that stuff, it's like, donate $3,750 so we can get Pat Dixon on the ballot for governor. By the way, he ran for Lago Vista City Council and won twice, and he's a good guy. People donated. They donated $3,750. And then we went for lieutenant governor and then these other offices. And we got I think it's 9 statewide candidates in Texas. And it's harder there, but we did a lot of work to make sure we have some. So every libertarian in Texas can vote 9 times for a libertarian statewide. What was your question?
A comment. In the state of Florida, you don't have to petition, you just pay a certain fee.
Yeah.
And you can get on the ballot. You have an option. And personally, I would rather pay the fee than go around petition. I petition.
Yeah.
And I've got the exact dollar amount.
Yeah. Well, so in many places, some places give you an option. Like Texas, there's an option. There's a signature count, or you can pay a filing fee. And the number of signatures is quite high in most cases, so it's almost always more practical to just write a check for it. Get your friends to donate a few $100, write the check. If it's a county office, it's like $750 or $1,100. Statewide is $3,750. But U.S. Congress is 500 signatures or $3,125. In Texas. 500 is kind of manageable because if anyone can sign, it's getting to be like that's like almost borderline. Should I do it? But Florida, they keep raising money and getting some candidates on the ballot. They're doing it, and they pass laws to make it harder. But we got to keep we got to work harder and get candidates to run. But also, if it's too hard, run for a nonpartisan office if they have those in your state. My city council race was nonpartisan. I got 35%, and a really mean newspaper said this libertarian got 35%. What a joke! They insult me, but they say I'm a libertarian, and it promotes libertarian. And here's what he stood for. He doesn't want to pay for anything. So great, that's right. Yeah. So anybody thinking about running for office in the future? Because I want you to think about it. What do you have any idea what office do you have something in mind?
Not really, just more of a, I guess, kind of from a philosophical standpoint.
Do it.
Do it, yeah.
Do it.
Well, I didn't want to put you on the spot too much, but let me just say this. When someone's thinking about running, I'm an engineer. Before I was a political activist, I was a mechanical engineer and have taken lots of statistics classes. It's like I'm very rational on the numbers and like control charts in manufacturing. So it's like I look at the data and I'm probably too realistic about what a libertarian can get in a race. So I'm just saying, but nevertheless, think about whether you want to win. And if you want to win, then look at what offices are going to be the most winnable. The most winnable races are nonpartisan races, or it could be a partisan race, but that's in a smaller district. So, obviously if there's only 10,000 voters, that's going to be easier to reach the voters and less expensive than if there's like 1 million voters. Libertarians sometimes win by going door to door and meeting enough voters and asking them to vote for you. So we do sometimes win partisan offices, but certainly the smaller, the easier. If you're running because you're disgusted that Congress is spending so much money, or you don't like that both Trump and Biden and Obama and Bush spent way too much money, you can run for Congress and complain about both of them. And I hope you win. If you want to try and win, that's great. But I want to there's a lot of data and a lot of long-term trends that show what's likely to happen. But do it. David Nolan, the founder of the Libertarian Party, I think they founded it in Colorado, right? But he moved here later. He ran in, I think it was like 2010 or something, or maybe 2012. I think it was 2010. He ran for U.S. Senator in Arizona, and he was included in the statewide debate. He was on television debating John McCain, who had just run for president and famously suspended his campaign to rush back to Washington to vote for the TARP bailouts. And so by being on the ballot, he's able to say that on live television all over the state. We had a candidate in Texas. You don't always get in those debates, by the way, but sometimes we do. And so be glad and take advantage of it when it happens. We had a candidate in Texas. It was a similar situation. Yvonne Schick, she ran for U.S. Senate in Texas. John Cornyn was the incumbent Republican. I forget who the Democrat was at this point, but they did have a televised debate, statewide debate. Everybody talked about it, and Yvonne Schick was on there, and likewise able to talk about those bailouts and how she would not vote for that. She was one of our 2008 candidates in that 173 I was talking about. John Cornyn's still there. He's running now. Now there are people gunning for a seat in the Republican primary. It's actually going to be close. And it's not hard to make a long list of things that even Republicans would not like about John Cornyn. I've made that list myself occasionally. Here's what I called it, the John Cornyn Wall of Shame, and posted it on my Facebook page. If you want to see some crazy stuff, go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Wes Benedict. I like saying what I don't agree with that other politicians do. He's one of them. And he's done a lot of bad things. fiscally and civil liberties wise. So spending money, do it, whatever. Us running when we can run, and we have a candidate for U.S. Senate, Ted Brown. He used to be the chairman of the California Libertarian Party, long-term libertarian. There's another libertarian who filed also. So we'll have a contested convention to see who the candidate will be. But they'll be out there talking about, if Cornyn wins, or if the other guy wins. I mean, there's plenty that the libertarian can say of why we don't like what Republicans or Democrats are doing. And it all has to do with growing government, growing spending, spying on us, violating our civil liberties. I mean, it's just so easy to point out all the hundreds of things they do constantly, and that's why you should vote Libertarian. So think about what you want to do. Do you want to talk about why the federal government sucks? Run for Congress, which is a fun thing to do. The federal government does suck, and it's great to talk about that. You might want to talk about how your state government sucks. Run as a Libertarian for that. Or you might want to run for school board or city council or whatever. And you might take a different approach if it's a nonpartisan race. But you might take the same approach. When I ran for Austin City Council and I got 35%, I said the city council sucks. They spend too much money, they tax us too much. I was complaining that they wanted to spend $2 billion on a light rail system, and I'm not for or against any form of transportation. I'm neutral on it, but I just don't want the government spending a ton of money on whichever the option is. And I was invited to all these progressive. The city of Austin's like San Francisco of Texas. That's what we call it. It's very democratic. So there were really no Republican or conservative things for me to go to ever. There were some libertarian events, one or two Republican, and a whole bunch of left-leaning things. And at every one of them, if it was like the people for the homeless or the people for the arts or the people for whatever, the thing I would say is, well, you want money for that? Well, they just spent $2 billion. They're asking for our budgets went down from 30 million to 28 million. I'm like, well, they just spent $2 billion on light rail, or they want to. I hope you're against that $2 billion, because if you need 2 million, they're going to spend 2 billion there. And I think it kind of was effective. These are people trying to help poor people, and you tell them they're going to spend $2 billion on a light rail system that's going to serve a very small quantity of kind of wealthy people, who can afford to live where that track's going to go. You can turn some progressives and liberals against some of the big government city council folks. I would encourage you to keep thinking about it, keep running. You can always email me or ask me for suggestions, but what I really want to see is Arizona libertarians running for office again. And I know you had a bunch maybe 15 years ago and the numbers come down, but that's the way it is. You got to start with where you are now and get some people to run and get on the ballot and do it again. I think, you probably have to have someone super dedicated to get on the ballot for a statewide race. You probably know the number requirements more than me. If that's totally not feasible, then get someone on for state representative or county commissioner and get one or two on there, and then try and do even more than that the next election cycle. When you kind of you learn the process, you learn the procedures, it's so easy to do it the second time around. Can you comment on Arizona elections?
It's been a while since I've looked at the number, but I think it's, mid-thousands to get on the ballot statewide.
Yeah.
And that's the minimum. It's probably 5,000. It's no longer a percentage of the Libertarian voter registration base. It is a percentage of your base plus
Independents. Yeah.
Independents, I think.
Yeah. So that bumped it up by a factor of 10, probably.
However, it's not horrible. It's not undoable. You just have to plan and think about it in advance, which we're often not good at. We decide in June that we want to run.
Yeah.
Primary is 2 months away. Well,
Yeah.
Sorry, it doesn't quite work that way. You need to think about it last year.
I think the deadline this year is like end of April in Arizona, or what? If you want to run for state representative?
I don't know.
Okay. What is it?
It's either late March or April.
Something like
It
that.
depends-
Okay.
It depends on when the primaries are scheduled.
if you want to be on the ballot this November, there's still time to do it. It's not a ridiculous, if for something like state representative, it's possible. And you don't want to spend a whole year doing a petition drive anyway. You kind of want to go out and get it done if you can in a few weeks. To me, that's the best way to do it while you're just in like petition mode. You know, you have your brain focused on it. So if anyone does or is willing to, please do it. Let me know, and I'll maybe help you find other Arizona libertarians to get it done. Any other questions on Arizona or any other thoughts on running for office in Arizona? Do you like candidates running?
I was elected 3 times to a community college governing board, served 18 to life. And when I was doing my petitioning, I had a garden variety rule of thumb. I was going to get 1/3 of the petition signatures I needed. My friends and volunteers were going to get 1/3, and then mercenaries were going to get 1/3.
Yeah.
And no, it was going to be 1/3 of each total, but the total number was my goal for me. I was going to get 500, my mercenaries were to get 500, and my friends were going to get 500. And we all failed, but we all failed at a high enough level that I still had unassailable margin. And just have a set of friends that you can count on. You know, oddly enough, it's not going to be mostly libertarians. Libertarians, you know, good at talking, less at doing. But if you want to run for something, get your friends and get some mercenaries.
Yeah, hire some people to pay. I'll tell you, in 2004, we got kicked off the ballot in Texas in 2002 because our statewide candidates didn't get enough votes. And so we had been on for a long time. We had to get 45,540 signatures to get back onto the ballot in Texas. And I'll tell you, that's why I got involved with the state party and probably why I became national executive director, because I wasn't really interested in all that. I just like doing I was an Austin guy. I thought it's fun to do this libertarian stuff part-time. And, you know, and I know Austin and I got to know folks and that's fun. And I didn't know anything about the state party at all. Never went to state conventions and didn't care to. But then we're not going to get on the ballot. Okay, wait. You know, if my state party is going to fail, and now that's going to have to shut down my county party now, and I also thought, you know, if the Texas party goes, that's going to hurt nationwide because Texas is a big portion. You know, it's demotivating when parts of the country drop really badly, and I'm waiting for them to do this petition drive, and I start hearing it's not going to happen. You know, they're having trouble, which. Big surprise, you know, that happens. Libertarian organizations or any organization can have a tough time. Especially there was a lot of infighting in Texas. It was different factions than what's going on today. There's always like factions fighting and it happens. But I finally said, okay, I'll help with the petition drive. And 45,540 signatures. Well, that's not so hard because we have 55 county chairs in Texas. And I'm like, well, it'll just be 1,000 signatures per county, you know, and that's going to get us so far. And so I said, I'll be volunteer coordinator because I'm going to get all these counties to get 1,000 signatures. And I sent out an email telling everybody about my plan, all these county chairs, and like half the emails bounced. They were, and I started asking around. It's like, no, we really don't. All these county chairs, none of them are active. A lot of them were gone. You know, they didn't even live in the county anymore. And I went and got I did go out and get, you know, I went on the first day and I think I got close to 100 signatures. That was my goal, day one. I think by day 2, I had 100. You know, it was harder than I thought. And getting other volunteers to do stuff, way harder than I thought. And I started traveling the state training volunteers, and we got a bunch of them to get a bunch of signatures, but it was becoming clear. You know, you can kind of look at the trend line. It's like, oh man, this isn't going to work. And I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I thought I could make this happen, and it's way harder than I thought. And at this point, we're starting to raise money and hire paid petitioners. And we had started at like 75 cents a signature. Man, these people who, you know, we had like 100 people working for us. They get like 3 signatures each, and I'd have to go write them a check for $2.25. And it took me 45 minutes to arrange that situation. And we finally no, we need a few good petitioners, pay them $2, $3, whatever it takes. And that's how we got the petition drive done. Volunteers did get 10,000 signatures in Texas, but the 70,000 were mostly paid petitioners where we were paying them $2.50 or $3 a signature. And that's how we got it done. So if you're going to run, there's enough folks around who know how hard it is to get signatures or know how to go get out and get them. Ask around and listen to some of the experienced folks. I'm not a new guy anymore. I'm an old guy, but I was a new guy once, and I remember showing up to my first county meeting in Cobb County, Georgia. There's 2 guys there, 2 old men, and I just kind of lashed at them. We need to get some stuff done, and you guys are no good. And here's how we got to do everything. And I was wrong on a whole lot of what I was saying. And I eventually was okay, wait, yeah. I started listening to them and taking their advice. I still grew it and got stuff going, but it helped me to work with the existing libertarians that were in there that knew all those processes and procedures. So we're running short on time. Any other questions? I did want to say this. So I run this organization, Libertarian Booster Pack. It's got that Pennsylvania letter that I wrote. It also talks about other candidates we recruited. Kind of tells the story of why I like recruiting candidates. So a lot of it's in here. It is a fundraising pitch for my PAC, but it's also, you can read this and just be motivated to run for office and help libertarians. I also wrote this book, Introduction to the Libertarian Party. I wrote this in 2012, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of books out there that suck, a lot of really boring books, and people besides me have said this book doesn't suck. It's 110 pages or 120 pages. It doesn't take that long to read, and there's a lot of books on libertarian philosophy, libertarianism, voluntarism, why the government's no good, you want small government, all that stuff. This just has a little bit of that in there. This is more about how the Libertarian Party works, why you should run for office, some of the basics you should do if you're going to be a candidate. Tells that horror story in Texas where we were having those challenges. I do discuss, there's a whole chapter on infighting because that's a significant part of the Libertarian Party. And I didn't say don't do it. I said if it's happening, work around it. I recruited candidates in Pennsylvania. I live in Texas. You don't necessarily have to go that far to find something to do. You can work, locally if you don't like what your state party's doing. You can work at the state level if you don't like what your local party's doing, or work on something nonpartisan, or call Texas and get some people to run for office in Texas where I live. You don't have to be stuck because some organization is kind of in a funk and dysfunctional. So this book, if you'd like one, I have a stack back there. They're $10 each. If you don't have $10, I'll probably give it to you for free. If you want to give me $20, I'll accept $20. So it's either 0, 10, or 20. And I'd be happy if you took a copy of this booster pack report that talks about recruiting candidates. And I really go through some of the very early stuff I did to help some of these candidates with a lot of basics like making a yard sign. There's simple stuff every candidate has to do that you can help them with on a scale and get a lot of it done. And things like filling out campaign finance reports. Helping candidates with all that work helps you get big numbers going. I say sometimes people look down on the Libertarian Party. And if you add up what the national party's raising and the state party, all the money and all the candidates we have, all that money added together, it's probably on the order of, what do you think?
Right now? 2.5 million.
I would guess $2.5 or $3 million. Okay? That's the size of one McDonald's. One McDonald's in Phoenix, one McDonald's in Dallas. They go through like $3 million. So in a way, that's kind of discouraging and depressing. But there's billionaires out there, and every so often they start new parties and spend $50 million or $100 million and do way worse. And if you stay for this next session, I'm going to go over some of those numbers. It's like, I'm still interested because I think one day someone's going to throw a $10 million check at the party or at me or whatever, and we're going to triple the party instantly because we're going to have some operations behind it that's helping to support everything. And it can happen. I mean, I raised just a little over $100,000 a year for this Libertarian Booster Pack. And one time a guy gave me 400 grand like 10 years ago, and that sustained for a while. But it's like, I think it can happen, and others can start. In this book, there's a chapter, start a pack and do things your way and go find a billionaire and get $1 million, and do this full time. I think it can still happen, and the party will grow a lot if there's that machine behind it.
What do you think of Perry Project? Not too many P's.
Yeah, Perry Willis, he talked about the Project Archimedes to recruit a whole lot more members and get them active, and I think it's great. I hope it's successful, and I don't know, something like that, you don't know how successful it's going to be until you've been running it for a while, maybe a year or two, and I think it's worth funding and see how it goes. I've done a lot of, probably the biggest complaint I got when I was National Executive Director was all the snail mail I sent. I sent a ton of junk mail, right? All these letters you get, please renew your membership, or please donate, or whatever. And it's like, why do you do that? Well, because it works. It works, and not doing it doesn't work. It's like a fundraising letter, it's not just getting money, it's also like a newsletter. Even if all it is a fundraising letter, it's like, oh, what are they doing? They're doing this. Cool. They want my money? No, I'm not giving you money, but it's nice to know you're doing this, and this. And it gets them involved again. So I've done a ton of fundraising letters myself, including as a candidate, as a state party executive director, and as a national director. And this Project Archimedes originally was based on fundraising letters, a lot of it, where you're sending paper mail out. Now things have changed to more online and social media, and but it's still the thing is, you try different groups, you try different messages, you see which one has the biggest return on investment, and you try and do some mailing to it.
And you have to ask.
You have to ask, yeah. Now, when I went and read those Archimedes reports, whatever I could find, when I was hired in 2009, because I'm like, well, they are supposed to have done all this studies, right, to see what organizations. They did all these test mailings to figure out what groups would work the best. And I was like, well, we don't have enough money to do that, but I'm just going to steal their answers, find out what groups work the best for them and send some prospecting letters, asking people to join the party. And it was registered libertarians who vote was a very high prospecting list. By the way, I knew registered libertarians was important, and so I got the registered libertarian list and did a test mailing, but we also took that list and ran it through an organization, I don't remember what it was, a service that gives you like 500 categories. Are they male, female, Hispanic, white, rich, poor, subscribe to this magazine or whatever. I looked at all those. There's way too much data, right? The number one thing was, do they vote recently on who was willing to join the Libertarian Party? And it was so clear, and there was no other good. It's like, surely there's some other good factors, but there wasn't. It's like all the other ones sucked. So it's like, okay, I sent a letter to all the rest of the registered libertarians who had voted in recent elections. So if you're going to try and raise money a lot of states don't have registered libertarians, by the way, which is a bummer. Where I'm in Texas, there's no they don't have registration by party. So you can't ask those people for money, and you don't know who to ask, and you can't ask them to run for office. So having registered libertarians, that's a great flag right there. It's an advantage you have in Arizona. You got a great target audience, people who register libertarian. The other thing was Reason Magazine. So some of these organizations will share their list. And I would have thought Cato Institute, right? Cato Institute is a libertarian organization. Surely they'll donate. But I did the test mailings. It's like Reason Magazine readers had a reasonable response as far as please join the Libertarian Party or donate. Cato was bad. It shocked me. It was like 5 times worse. You know, it's like 1% response from Reason, 0.2% response from Cato. I was like, okay, I guess Cato's not as libertarian as I thought, but those Reason guys are. And Reason's often mocking the Libertarian Party. Sometimes they're okay with it, but sometimes they're making fun of it. But I guess, sometimes being made fun of gives you attention and gives you awareness. So, any other questions on running for office or being a candidate? I want you to be a candidate.
Yes.
Everybody.
I think you're out of time, but
Okay.
If I was to decide to try to run in the state of Arizona, I know we supported the other states. Do you have the ability to support that now? Or would it take you a little time to ramp up specifically for what an Arizona candidate would need?
Yeah. If you were to decide to run, I would just talk to some other Arizona libertarians and try and convince them to help you. And I think that would be the most practical, efficient thing. I would be certainly happy to give you a little coaching here and there. I'm super busy, and when I take on a project, I usually do a state and focus on a bunch of candidates for that state, because then I go learn the whole deal myself. So when I had those candidates in Pennsylvania, I stepped them all. I learned the campaign finance filing, and I stepped them through that whole thing. And I called the state of Pennsylvania like probably 30 times during that process. Hey, they have a mortgage. Do they have to report the mortgage, or you don't have to report a mortgage? And the answer is something like, if it's your first home, you don't have to report it. If your second home for your rent, you do have to report that as an asset on your disclosure of financial interests or whatever. All that's different in every state. And like I said, it takes a while to learn that. And so if I'm going to do that, I want to have like 20 candidates or a bunch I'm helping. I don't actually have time to do a whole new state anywhere right now. I'm helping Texas candidates right now. But I do think there's enough folks in Arizona that I can help you find who will help you to have a decent campaign. If you're running for you thinking not a statewide office? If it's local, people will step up and help you. I'm confident. Yeah.
It's like wondering what it would take for you to go, okay, Arizona's my next target.
It would take me till 6 months from now. Like, I can't do it by this April, but I would maybe consider it for a future election cycle. I can't do it in 2026. I'll tell you that. I can't do it. But like if y'all had some elections in 27 or 28, it might be I'd be available to try and do like some statewide effort. And it was weird. I sent the greatest offer New Jersey could ever have. Because, it's like, here's all this thing I've done, all these candidates I've recruited. And I had helped a few candidates in New Jersey like 6 years before. Gave them free, Vic Kaplan, maybe is his name, or Ken Kaplan. I gave them free yard signs and bumper stickers, sent them out, just nothing for free. Because I was making a bunch of signs and stickers for other candidates and sent them out for free. He liked them fine, But I sent this thing to New Jersey saying, I want to help you recruit candidates. And I showed them all the ones I had done. I showed them the actual letters. It's like, here's a copy. Here's what I did. And everyone's noticed I've done this. It's not, you can call any state and ask, did I do it? It's all they know. And they're like, nah, we don't want your help. Now, a couple months later, they called me and said they did want my help. And by then I had taken on another project. And I was like, dang, man, I wanted to do it, but I can't now. So, that's how it happens. I want the PAC to someday have enough money so I can hire. I'm not doing magic. It's like, it's processing those credit card applications, turning people into candidates, turning people into credit card holders. That's what I'm doing. and give them some tools so they can be a candidate, get their campaign finance reports in on time so they don't get fined, and give them some basic talking points so they don't get embarrassed, and they feel comfortable to go out there. That's what I like to do. And I think we can do it on a bigger scale and get this party big, big, big again. So thank you for coming. We'll take a break. All right.